Hello and welcome to ENH iSecure blog. I am Swapna Sarit and today we'll have a demo on configuring and testing workflows in IdentityNow. Before configuration, we need to check the prerequisites to avoid unwanted changes to our identity management system. As per prerequisites, we have created one dummy identity source which will act as the true source. This is the delimited file-based source. We have configured identity profile for the true source as well as identity mapping and enabled provisioning for this source. We also have created one Active Directory source as an end application, and we can see we do not have any kind of uncorrelated data or identity exception. Let's quickly start with our workflow. Our first test case will be using one available template to configuring a workflow to send an email when an access request is decided. As we have logged into IdentityNow portal, directly go to the workflow tab and click on new workflow. Here, click on start with a template and select a template. Template library have various pre-configured templates in order to help you starting with building workflows. Scroll down and select send an email when an access request is decided. As it is pre-configured template, you can keep the name and description as it is or you can provide a new one. Let's understand each step and its inner configurations. We have access request decision as trigger point. It stores metadata when any access request is approved or rejected. We can also have the trigger filter to limit the condition under which this trigger starts the workflow. Get identity action is to get identity data for the identity that the access was requested. It will have the complete metadata for that identity. As an inner configuration part, it has a JSON path using variable selector to capture the ID of the identity. We also have another identity action as get identity 1 to gather information about the user's manager. As an inner configuration, here also we have one JSON path which indicates the manager reference ID. Send email to action to send an email to the identity that is the target of the access request with the details of the decision. In the right hand side, we have description for this send email to action button. A JSON path is provided to capture email ID of the user at set and set it as the recipient address. In form section, it is blank as it is the default. In subject, it is a static value. The body text of the email, which is a HTML based code, and this can be edited in HTML editor or any plain text editor. As you can see, it contains some variable which make the body dynamic and have dependency on templating context. The templating context is nothing but a JSON object having list of the variable used in email body and their respective JSON paths. The specified JSON path will retrieve the data from different step value and assign it to the variable. As as you can see, we have just replace this pre-configured body and template context with our new one. We also have another send email action. This email action is to send an email to the identities manager to notify them of the access change. Here also we have another JSON path which is set as the recipient email address. It gets email value from the get identity one action. Here also subject is the static one and we can change the body as well. As we have changed the body, we need to have the changes in templating context as well. At last, we have an operator which is a success. It decides the workflow to end. Let's save the workflow and test our workflow. Before proceeding with testing, verify that we don't have any validation error. IdentityNow workflows have this feature to keep validation or keep validating the steps and its inner configuration, and it will indicate the error if there is any. Once it is error free, we can have this verification here also, no validation error detected, and this test workflow button will be get activated. Once you click on the text workflow, we have a new window where it will show us the current steps and also have a demo JSON object as an input to the workflow. We need to replace the access request ID with a real-time access request ID from our tenant. In general, we need to replace all the values with a real-time value from our tenant and maintain the structure. We can retrieve this required IDs using API call in Postman, or we can use search as well. Here you can see we just changed this workflow input test input with the with our workflow test input. So click on test start workflow test. As you can see, all those steps are getting executed one by one and it ends with the operator success. If we click on each and every step, we can get the step input and what is the step output for this. So to verify our workflow got executed successfully, we have two parameter. One is send email to and send email. So we must have get two new email in our email box. So exit this test and here we can see we have two new email notification. One is to the manager with all the access request decision that have been taken, and one is to the requester with the access request decision. Let's quickly move to the second test case where we will configuring a workflow to create and activate a certification campaign when an attribute change happens on identity. So click on the new workflow and select the start in the workflow builder. Here it is asking to give a name and description. So we will give certificate campaign attribute change. So in description we'll have test workflow visual builder, continue to builder. Now we have a blank canvas where we need to define the path using required triggers, actions and operators which is available on the left hand side. We have four column here. One is all. It have all action, triggers and operators listed in a single column. Then we have separate for each step. One is trigger, second is action, third is operators. From trigger, we'll select identity attribute changed as our workflow will start when there is an identity attribute change happens. Here we need to give a description and we can have a attribute filter as well. In attribute filter, we have one basic and second is advanced. If we go with advanced, we need to provide a JSON path expression which will limit the condition under which this trigger starts the workflow. If we go with basic, it will show us a list of attribute as a drop down list, and from here we can select what attribute we need to have in our attribute filter. Now we need to add an operator which will do the conditional choice based on the string comparison and select the path for data flow. Click on the operators, look for compare string. As it is a compare string, it will require two string value. So for first string, we need to provide a JSON path and we need to choose the operator as well. And for the value 2, we can have a JSON path as well as a string. So as we know, workflow always detects the error or like it keeps validating the steps and notifying us the errors that we have in our path. So here it is saying compare string choice must have next. So we need to have our next step for each path. So for false, we we want to have one end step with success status. But for the true path, we need to create a certification campaign. Here we provided the description. For campaign name, we can have a static value. And for campaign description, we can have a mix of JSON path and static value. Here under reviewer type, we are selecting manager, and in campaign duration we are selecting 1 week. We can enable or disable the email notification. It will keep notifying the reviewers. And for undecided access items, we are selecting maintain access. So as we are completed with creation of certification campaign, we need to inform the reviewer. Here the reviewer is manager as we have selected the manager certification campaign. Here, if we click on the drop down list, we can have a direct identity, but we'll select choose variable, and we'll select a attribute from our variable selector. So here you can see a JSON path is got created. So based on the JSON path, we are retrieving the ID of the identity from trigger. So basically it is retrieving the technical ID of the identity which triggered this workflow. But we are still yet to have the manager ID. So for that one, we will have another get identity one action button. For here, we'll go for variable selector, and we'll select the get identity where we have metadata of the identity that triggered this workflow. And from there, we'll select the manager reference ID. Post this, we need to configure our email action. You can have a direct recipient email address, or we can have this dynamic as well. To have this email recipient address dynamic, we need to provide a JSON path. From address, we can keep it as it is because in general, SailPoint sends notification from no reply at the rate SailPoint email address. Here for subject, we can also have a static value or a mix of static and JSON path. In body, we have just pre-configured one body to send the mail to the recipient. Here recipient name will be replaced with the technical ID or name of the manager, and it will have the display name of the identity ID, and it will have also have the campaign name. To replace the this variable with the real value, we need to have the templating context. As we have proceeded with email button, we need to end our workflow path. So for that one, another operator with end step. As we can see, cell until now we didn't have any kind of validation error. So click on save and click on text workflow. Here also we need to replace this example workflow test input with our new one. So here I replaced this identity ID with a technical ID of my from my environment is name, and here job title I have this, the old value is employee and the new value is mobile manager. So start workflow test. Once you click on text workflow, we'll have a new window where it will show us the current step and also have a demo JSON object as an input to the workflow. We need to replace the ID of the identity and other data mentioned in the example JSON object structure. In general, we need to replace all the values with a real-time value from our tenant and maintain the structure. In order to retrieve this technical ID, we can do this using API call in Postman. Otherwise, we can have this from search option. As you can see, the attribute changes have been happened based on the JSON input, and it triggered the workflow. Then it is the compare string is comparing the string value that have been the state of creating certification campaign. Post creating the certification campaign, it will retrieve the identity using get identity action, and then it will retrieve the manager's reference ID, and from manager's reference ID it will configure the send email or email content and send the email. As we can see, our workflow have been completed and we have success status for each and every step. So let's quickly verify our workflow. So for this one, exit the test, go to certification, click on campaign. Here you can see we have one new certification campaign in active state, and for the double verification we can go to our mailbox, and here we can see we have new emails. One is to the manager with the details of campaign detail and the identity which have changed the department or job role. Let's have a look on using JSON for creating workflow. So to do this, click on new workflow. Here we'll have a start with a JSON file and click on upload file. Here we can see we can drag and drop the JSON file here or upload the file from your computer. Once you upload the file, it will automatically take the name and description from that JSON file, and if you continue on builder, we'll have the complete workflow configured in our canvas. In order to test the workflow, click on test workflow and same, just replace this example body or example workflow test input with a new one. Here you can see I have technical ID of my Active Directory workflow source test and mention the connector type. It is a direct connector, and what kind of connector it is used. So it is a Active Directory connector, and who is the actor, its name and what kind of actor it is. Is it an identity or what? Click on start workflow test. As it is sending email, once it is complete, we can verify that we can verify this workflow by checking our mailbox. Here you can see we have get this email alert like dear admin, this is the inform that this source have been created and this is the actor. Thank you.